Welcome to the Modern Classrooms Project podcast. Each week, we bring you discussions with educators on how they use blended, self-paced, and mastery-based learning to better serve their students. We believe teachers learn best from each other, so this is our way of lifting up the voices of leaders and innovators in our community. This is the Modern Classrooms Project podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 211 of the Modern Classrooms Project podcast. My name is Toni Rose, they, them pronouns, a designated hype person here at MCP. And I am joined today by a pre-K through second grade principal in a rural school. So I'm so excited to have Sara on the podcast with us. Welcome, Sara.
Hi, thank you, and welcome.
It's so exciting to be in this space with you, and thank you so much for saying yes to the podcast. And I know that I just kind of emailed you out of the blue, and I was like, hey, Sara, I know that you're going through a virtual mentorship program, so I'd really love to hear about your experience and maybe have you on the podcast, just kind of talk about the school leader perspective as well. So I'm just really excited that you were like, yes, let's do it. And you've been so flexible and just excited. So before we get started, what is bringing you joy currently?
Well, this morning I got to go into some classrooms, and we've just adopted a new curriculum. And it's been a challenge, like anything with change, and just seeing how teachers have embraced it, and they're really putting the practices into motion for the kids. And I can see that the kids are learning from this and developing some great strategies to help them with their reading.
Yes, I love hearing school leaders coming into classroom spaces, right? Just to kind of check in and make sure that everyone is feeling good. I guess my follow-up question, and I already have follow-up questions, which is wild, right? How did you decide on a new curriculum? What did that process look like?
I am so glad you asked that question, because this is my 24th year in education, and I've seen it done the wrong way, and I really feel strongly that we did it the right way this time. So a year prior to adopting this curriculum, we had a literacy team that got together throughout the two elementary buildings. And we looked at, first of all, creating that vision and mission statement for what did we want out of a new curriculum. And then we were able to use that to guide us in looking at, we picked 4 that we looked at first, and then we kind of narrowed that down to 2. And then between the 2, we piloted both of those within that year. So it was a lot of after school meetings, and people put in the work and really made it beneficial. And then I think as we're implementing it now, it makes it more meaningful for those teachers as well.
This got me really excited because it is very much a collective, right? It's not one of those surprise, you have a new curriculum, but it's actually like, you know what, we're going to do this together as a team. We're going to look at 4 different curriculums. So everyone has the options to take a look at what's going to work well. What do we want? This whole mission and vision thing. I love that. That is one of the quote unquote right ways to roll out a curriculum. And so when you piloted 2 of the curriculums, how did that go for you and your teachers?
So through that pilot, we were able to kind of balance and weigh the positives and negatives of both curriculums and really align it to what we had decided in our mission and vision. So it was kind of a no-brainer for us with letters training and making sure that we were utilizing the practices that we felt were benefiting kids. We were able to pick one pretty clearly. We did get to go and observe the curriculums being used in other districts as well, which was really helpful. And just having those conversations with those teachers that had implemented it, kind of learning from their mistakes and learning what worked best for them.
Oh, Sara, this is so cool. That's so cool that you were even able to just make time, right? And to prioritize checking it out in action, just to make sure this is feel good to us. Does this actually align with what we want for our students and for our community? Oh my gosh, I love that. That is so dope. I'm so glad to hear that. And so thank you for sharing what's bringing you joy. And now that's bringing me joy, because that's just very much giving me a lot of hope too, as far as how to roll out a curriculum. Because I know I've talked to multiple teachers all across the country and the world, right? They're just like, oh, we have so many or we have a new curriculum. It just came out of nowhere. Or they're like, oh, they gave us a training back in April it's September now. I don't know what I learned back in April. So nobody's utilizing the new curriculum, which I think, oh, that's so sad. Like there's such a gap there, right? There's like this learning curve, and there's teachers want that support. And so I really love this, again, just making sure welcoming them into this decision-making space. And so that there's a lot more. One of our podcast guests said collective determination, right? Kind of like a buy-in of like, oh, this feels good. I love it. So, okay. Sara, you said 24 years in school environment. That is amazing. So tell us more about who you are, how you started your education journey, and then of course, like, how did you come across MCP?
So I got to give a shout out to my Panthers. I graduated from UNI, University of Northern Iowa, here in Iowa in 1999. I know I just don't look that old, do I?
It's amazing. Amazing.
But, at that time, I was getting my reading endorsement and went into a Title I position. For 10 years, I taught a K-6 building, Title I. So I really got to understand like the needs of individualized learning. And then from there, went into the classroom. I taught in second grade, third grade, fourth grade. I did a looping experience, and that was amazing. I also had, let me go back, as a student teacher, I was able to be in a year-round school. So I've had a lot of different experiences throughout educational journey. But then after doing the looping, then I went to a first grade classroom. And from there, I became an instructional coach, and was that in the building that I'm currently the administrator in. So I was an instructional coach for 7 years and now a principal. This is my third year as principal.
I love that whole ladder, right? Just like, oh, I started here and then I got here and then I got here, right? That's really dope. Have you always wanted to teach elementary school?
I have. I grew up with a mother who was a fifth grade teacher throughout most of my childhood, and just spent nights doing bulletin boards and seeing her work with kids. She is definitely my inspiration. Just a wonderful teacher and mentor, and proud to have her as my mama.
Oh, I love that. And you're glowing as you say this. And I think that in itself is so impactful, right? Like just the teacher life and the impact it has in all corners of their lives, right? So, okay, this is great. Thank you for just showcasing all the different experiences that you've had. And so how did you come up with MCP? And I know like pre-K to second grade, what piqued your interest? And you're in Iowa as well, which I was like, oh, I didn't even know we had schools or teachers in Iowa. So this was really cool when I saw that you were in Iowa and then you were pre-K through second grade. Yeah, tell us all the things.
So we have a wonderful superintendent in our district, and she does a lot to find continuous learning opportunities for us that are going to benefit not only us, but our students. And she had shared in her newsletter about this opportunity, and we had gotten a grant to get so many free seats. So of course I jumped on the bandwagon and wanted to learn more about it. So I think one of the things that is most important to me as a leader is clear communication and expectations. And that is MVP. I mean, you just do a great job of setting that up for people, whether it be your students in the classroom or for me, my teachers, my parents, things like that. So that was a lot of what I was able to utilize through the program, is how I could use it to model for my teachers what they could then do in the classroom.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's so dope. And I also just like, my heart melts whenever I see school leaders go through a virtual mentorship program, because it is a lot, right? It could be overwhelming. And I also have seen multiple times when a school leader has taken the virtual mentorship program and then they're able to have those conversations, meaningful conversations and implementation support for the teachers in their building. And so, okay, you recently went through a virtual mentorship program, right? We talked about that. And you've said like, oh, it was clear communication. It was great. I got some strategies. I got modeling, I got all of that good stuff. How did you manage your time as a school leader to make sure that you were, going through this course and also having enough space in your brain and your schedule to process the learning that you were getting?
I think because it was so useful within the classroom, because it's so tied to what I was doing anyway, that it wasn't that much of an extra, and you just make it part of your priority list. So I always try to have 3 big priorities every day, and that was one of the things that I put on my priority list, and was able to get what I needed.
Was there a particular section that you were just like, oh, I really love this? Because I know that you had different modules.
So the world we live in today requires a lot of individualized teaching. So each student you'd be surprised at how many students have their own plan, kind of an accommodation plan. And so the must do, should do, and aspire to do just really helped a lot with some of those plans, because we have so many kids, and it's not just the ones that need accommodations to help them because they struggle. It's the ones that are above and beyond that we sometimes skip. So I think that aspire to part really brought to light some needs within the classrooms. So I'm hoping to see that get utilized more through my examples. What I've tried to do is through my staff meetings, I try to set that up in the same way. So I give them, their must-dos, their should-dos, and then explaining what that means. What is a should-do? What is an aspire to do? What is a must-do? So then I can see that happening in classrooms too.
I love this concept too. Just like I want to model it so that our teachers can also take away from it. And you talked about your 3 priorities every day, right? And I think that's your must do. Your 3 priorities are your must do, and then the other things, if you have time and capacity, those are the should do and the aspire to do's. And I think this is also just like such a nice reminder for our listeners, right? Like students get to learn how to prioritize through modeling when they see their teachers prioritizing like the must do, should do, aspire to do, right? It just kind of trickles down the skill set of prioritizing. And so I know, did you just start implementing that this school year, or were you implementing it a little bit last school year?
So I completed the course right at the end of the school year. So really nothing of what I did was implemented last year. It was mostly coming into this year. And then one other thing that I really utilized was just the idea of making the videos. I loved that idea. In the course, you'll see some scenarios played out, and you get to watch some classroom situations where you get to kind of observe and give feedback on what's happening. And that was very useful for me to be able to put it into practice in my own school. So, but using those videos and seeing how, if you do miss something in the learning, you can go back, watch the video again. And I've done that a lot for my parents. So like, for example, our morning drop-off process, because I used it to teach them what our expectation is for morning drop-off. And then if a parent forgot or if we're seeing things not getting bad, I can repost the video. We can revisit the needs.
Oh, I love this. I mean, you're getting really creative with videos as well as a school leader, right? And understanding too that like, oh, I don't have to repeat myself. I could just literally grab this video that I already created, and then folks can go and watch it at 2 times speed if they wanted. But I guess like the visual part of it is really helpful too, right? Just being able to see you, being able to hear you, being able to like understand the process. Oh my gosh, I love this.
Same thing for like teachers new to, like I did a video on a program that we're using called Press, and kind of modeling the different strategies that you can use within that. And then if we have new teachers that move in that weren't able to be there for that, then they can revisit that too and get the same message that I gave the first time.
Oh, I love this. This is so, so, so cool. So how have your teachers been responding to your must do, should do, aspire to do, and also just the videos? Have you heard any feedback? I know it's pretty early in the school year.
Well, and with developing or with adopting a new curriculum, it can be a lot on a teacher. It's a big change. It's kind of new ways of teaching for a lot of us. And I think, they're able to see that we don't have to do it all. So by giving them those must-dos and the should-dos, the expectation can be a little different for every person, because teachers are just like our students. Some already have some knowledge that they maybe can do the must-dos a little quicker and they can get to the aspire tos, but others maybe need to just focus on those must-dos right now, and that's okay. We definitely understand that. We're all at different places. So letting them know that these things don't worry about, and these things, let's really focus on them first.
I mean, and that's being respectful of your teacher's time, right? And being respectful of the fact that like life is lifing out here and we're all humans, and some folks have a better grasp of their schedule while some don't. And that is okay. That's not like a shade on anyone, but it's just, again, giving this spectrum of like, here's the things that we need to do, we must do, and then also understanding that if you get to the should do and aspire to, that's really cool. And I'm sure your teachers love that, right? Like you're naming the thing of like, hey, implementing a new curriculum is hard, it's challenging. So we, like you said, don't have to do it all. And I'm sure that your teachers really appreciate you saying that.
Well, and I'm hoping that they see through that too, that they can offer that same thing to their students.
Yeah. And again, this is the power of modeling, right? The power of seeing like, oh, this is how my school leader is doing it. So then I know that I can also now have permission to do the same thing, because I think sometimes it's this like permission that we have in our heads of like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. But then if I see my leader doing it, then it's a definite like, oh, I can definitely do something like that, right? So how do you, okay, I guess the biggest question too now is, as a school leader, how do you anticipate, because you have a new curriculum, rolling out modern classrooms and just the things that you've learned? Because I know that you started doing your videos already. You started doing the lesson classification as well, the must do, aspire to do, should do. What else are you planning on implementing for the school year that's not going to overwhelm the teachers because you're balancing it out with a new curriculum?
So I think we always learn best from our peers. And I think that would be my next goal, is to try to get at least 2 or 3 more people within the building to complete the course so they can see how to utilize it as well and start some of those practices. I would also be willing to help do some lesson planning with teachers to incorporate some of the practices as well.
Are you planning on just saying like, hey, we have an opportunity for 2 to 3 teachers to sign up. We'd love for you to join in on this type of learning experience. Would you be interested? And then also providing time for them to plan as well. Is that what you're thinking?
Yes.
Oh, that's so exciting. So, okay, let's, I guess another thing is that I'm not well versed in the pre-K through second world. So what are you anticipating could be a challenge or a celebration once you start implementing different parts of the model in those younger classrooms?
I think the biggest challenge for us right now is just with introducing this new curriculum that is kind of taking over all of our brain power right now. I also think that preschool through 2 is a lot of new experiences for kids, and we have a lot of challenging behaviors and outside circumstances that make it difficult to learn and understand and be able to do things as well as we'd like to.
And that's real, right? That's so real. And a lot of the times too that I've heard is like, oh, the younger kids aren't able to do blank. And it's like, no, they can. There's just a lot more support that needs to happen because they are younger, and a lot more patience as well, right? Because they do require a lot more support, which is totally fine.
Hey there, listeners. It's Zach here. Did you all know that our co-founder, Rob Barnett, wrote a book? It's called Meet Every Learner's Needs, Redesigning Instruction so All Students Can Succeed. It'll be published in February 2025, and Rob will be doing a series on his process of writing. I personally am super excited to read it, and there is a link you can check out in the show notes. Now let's hear from Emily, and then we'll get back into it with Toni Rose and Sara.
Hi everyone, Emily Dia here, Senior Director for Educator Support. I am wondering, are you an educator in Alabama, Baltimore, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Chicago, DC, LA, Minnesota, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Vermont, New York City, Oakland, St. Louis, or Tulsa County, Oklahoma? Then you're eligible to apply for one of our scholarships to work with a personal mentor and learn the MCP model through our self-paced virtual mentorship program. Applications are open now for our October and January sessions, and scholarship recipients receive a fully funded seat in the VMP and eligibility to earn a $500 stipend when you finish the course. The deadline for the October session is fast approaching, and seats are limited across all locations. Head to www.modernclassrooms.org/apply-now to learn more and submit your application. That's modernclassrooms.org/apply-now. We would love to learn with you this year.
I'd love to switch to just have a conversation about rural schools, right? Have you always worked in rural schools, Sara?
I have, yes. Growing up in Iowa, it's kind of the norm here. There's not a whole lot of big cities. So all three of the districts I've worked in have been rural schools.
Okay. And just for me, I'm asking for me, what makes a school rural?
We have a lot of smaller towns within our big town, I guess, that join us. So a lot of kids are coming from the country, which makes for longer transportation, and funding is not as big as it would be in a bigger city. Access to resources wouldn't be as big. Our pay isn't as big as a bigger city, so that's hard to retain teachers when they could make more somewhere else.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the teacher retention. How are y'all doing? Because there's shortage of teachers everywhere, right? So how's your district holding up with that challenge?
The teacher shortage is getting better, I will say. In the 3 years that I've been a principal, I'm seeing more and more people going into that arena, and then more opportunities for faster paced education to become a teacher. So there's more people looking for jobs in the educational world, which is great to see. It's getting better.
Do you have a full staff this year, Sara?
We do. So we were short an ELL teacher to start the year, but we just hired. So.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Fully staffed. That is incredible.
Yes. And I will say the specialized areas are the hardest to fill. So like we had a behavior teacher. That was a hard space to fill. And then ELL strategy, Strat 2 teachers are not as easy to find.
Okay. That's good. I'm glad to hear that you're fully staffed, because I know there's a lot of schools all across the nation who are not fully staffed. And I also, going back to the model of like the videos, right? Like if a new teacher were to come in later on, then you already have all of those videos that you can share with the teacher already. Just like you said, same messaging, same energy, and you don't have to repeat it at all. So that saves you a lot of time as well, which I think is really great. Do y'all happen to have, do you have an instructional coach there in your building as well?
We do. And that was the position that I had before this. So it's been nice for me to be able to really hone in on my coaching skills and working with people. And then we have 2 buildings within my district, and each building has an instructional coach. So it's been nice having that, especially with this curriculum adoption.
Yes, I'm sure they're leading the way with that too, with lots of support.
Oh, yes. Mine is amazing. I don't know what I would do without her.
I love that. Okay, so what are your top 2 priorities for this school year as a leader? I know one of them is curriculum. You're like, I got to make sure my teachers are good with the curriculum, and I got to make sure that like they feel good about it, right? They have the support that they need, the resources that they need. Would you say that you have another priority for this school year as a leader? Because I know that you also really value as a school leader, you said in your bio, like, I really think I'm a firm believer that we learn the best from our mistakes, which I think is so great. So yeah, what's your other priority for the school year?
So first and foremost, my top priority is the safety of students. With all that's happening in the world, I always want to ensure that all students are safe and happy and feel good coming to school, know that they're valued and loved. The second thing for me is really building my team. So if you want to grow the fruit, you have to start with the root, if you know what I mean, and making sure that staff is happy and feeling valued and feeling like what they're doing is making a difference, because the opportunity that we have to impact kids every day, that is the reason I do it. That's, to me, is number one. And I come from a family where my dad had a rough go being in his childhood. And if it hadn't been for a teacher telling him every day that he is something, that he matters, I probably wouldn't be here today. And so I value that every day, and I want that for every kid.
Oh, that's so amazing. Your top two priorities. You're absolutely right with the safety concern, right? With everything that's happening, we got to make sure that our students feel valued, feel seen, every single one of them, because that ultimately then creates a much better environment for all, right? And I love that, like, your top priority just kind of trickled down to your second priority of just well-being. I think you hold so many just experiences that you've gone through that you've really just want to create the space for teachers, not just for students, but your team as well. And this whole focus on like creating your team and making sure that they're good, that is so powerful, Sara. So thank you for being that type of leader where you are transformational, where you're making a difference. And again, going back to like your family, your ancestors, right? Of just being like, hey, this was a teacher's impact. And I know how much a teacher can impact an individual. And so I want to continue to create that space so that that's my legacy, that it continues to be in this like really great, brave, safe-ish space for students. So I love that.
I'm a huge John Gordon fan. So I don't know if you've read The Energy Bus or any of his readings, but really you gotta focus on the positive and look at what's going well and look at what you're doing right and build on that.
I love that. Yes, because, again, as human beings, we tend to focus on the negatives, right? And we tend to really get down about all the negative things that are happening that we sometimes forget to look at what the light is shining on. So I really appreciate that. And listeners, will put that book in the show notes as well in case you want to read it and learn a little bit more, just like what Sara's mindset has been, which I really, really love again. So, okay, well, Sara, is there anything else that you want to talk about? I know that your time is important and I want to make sure that I respect it.
Just thank you for this opportunity and getting to share my experience from this learning. And I would recommend it to anybody that's an educator, because a lot of people, when our superintendent suggested this, a lot of high school, middle school teachers were jumping on because they felt it fit more to that, but you can utilize this with our little ones too. So don't think that our students wouldn't understand the concepts, because they will, and they do.
It's been really fascinating too, Sara, because I've also been looking for pre-K teachers who are implementing the model, and I've found a handful of them, not a lot, but a handful of them, and they absolutely love this. And then I was able to also witness kindergarten classes implementing the model. And I was like, if anything, I feel like that brings me so much more joy than like seeing a middle school or a high school classroom, because I was like, oh my goodness, these are like 6, 7-year-olds really just owning their learning and understanding where and what they need to do to access whatever it is that they're learning. So it's really dope. Thank you so much for sharing that as well. And okay, so what goals do you have? I know that you have your top two priorities, and this could be, a goal that you have in a couple of years by the end of the year. What do you hope to see in the future as far as education is concerned? And I mean, do you plan on staying for a while? Because this is your 24th year of being in education.
I'm going to stay until I can't do it anymore.
Yes, we love to hear it.
I believe passionately in educators and what we do. And I have mad respect for anybody in this field, because it's not an easy job, and it's sometimes a thankless job, as far as, especially at our age, students don't always recognize the opportunities that they're getting each day. They do later in life, but in the time, it's not always appreciated that we are learning. And that's not all students, but some, but just the fact that we keep going and show up the next day, I just am in awe of any educator. And just knowing what I hope for the future is that we always have that belief that every student can learn. Every kid has genius. Every kid is special in some way. And that's always been my goal as a teacher, is to help students see that in themselves, bringing it out. What is your special gift? What is your talent? What are the things that you can bring to this world to make it better? And always looking at ways we can improve our world around us.
Sara, I think I would have loved to have you as a school leader. This just sounds so lovely. It was such a nice surprise to get this perspective from you as well. And so I don't know, this was just it felt really good in my heart. So thank you for using your impact. Thank you for using your experience and your power, right, to create a space that's much better for our learners and for all stakeholders involved. Because you also mentioned parents and caregivers. You mentioned, your teachers, you mentioned your students. And I also just really appreciate the fact that you still identify as a teacher, right? Like you say, no, as a teacher, I want to do this. And so that makes me so happy, because I know sometimes school leaders have been so far removed from the classroom, right? And I don't know what school leaders do. I know that they're also just as overwhelmed. And so to hear you just say, like, as a teacher, this is what I want. And so thank you so much, Sara. How can our listeners connect with you?
They can email at sbennis@makokotaschools.org. We do have a Makokata Facebook page. If anybody would like to get on our Facebook page, we love celebrating all the successes we have in schools. So you'd see lots of things there. We have a Twitter account, Instagram. Just look it up at Makokata Schools.
I love that. And listeners, no worries about the spelling. We'll have it on the show notes. So you could just quickly click on it so you could follow and take a look at what Sara has created and her community. So again, Sara, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and experience with us. Listeners, remember, you can always email us at podcast@modernclassrooms.org, and you can find the show notes for this episode at podcast.modernclassrooms.org/211. We'll have this episode's video uploaded on the Modern Classrooms YouTube channel and transcript uploaded by Friday, so be sure to check back to access those. Also, we are asking our listeners to leave a review if this podcast has been helpful in supporting you to create a human-centered learning environment through a blended, self-paced, mastery-based model. It does help other folks find it. Thank you all for listening. Have a great week, and we'll be back next Sunday. Sara, you are a rock star. I'm so happy that you're doing the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. You can find links to topics and tools we discussed in our show notes for this episode. And remember, you can learn more about our work at www.modernclassrooms.org, and you can learn the essentials of our model through our free course at learn.modernclassrooms.org. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at modernclassproj, that's Proj. We are so appreciative of all you do for students in schools. Have a great week, and we'll be back next Sunday with another episode of the Modern Classrooms Project podcast.